What is happening out there, rotoscouts basketball fans? Welcome to the show, gang. Little Thursday action for you. Got a little group in the chat already. Cujo's here, Steven Leibowitz is here, Mamba's here. As Steven points out, can't start the show until Cujo says hi to everybody. Glad we got that taken care of. Just a couple minutes late. Had some changes to take care of real quick at the last minute there for Portland. They had Jeremy Grant ruled out, Jabari Walker confirmed out, and now Anthony Simons is also questionable for them. So interesting to keep an eye on, but I just ran a quick update for the DraftKings slate. I'm rerunning the sim right now, and it actually just finished up. So that was why we were a couple minutes late getting started. Apologies for that. Let me just do a little copy pasting here into the spreadsheet, and we'll be ready to rock and roll here. How you guys doing today? How did everybody do last night? Anybody take anything interesting down? I did not have a great lineup going last night. Fontecchio killed me. The start by, what was it, like the entire first quarter, both Fontecchio and Bruce Brown were double zeros. Never a good start. But Fontecchio never got his act together. Bruce Brown finally did. Rest of that lineup that I ran was all right. I had very similar lineups. Like we were talking about on the show yesterday, it was a lot of really similar site to site yesterday. So I had pretty similar lineups on both sites. Didn't end up getting there. Like I've said a few times, I've just been rolling. I'm at the point where I'm ready to throw up my hands with some of this nonsense with NBA, and I get there basically every season. So just been rolling one just to stay active, stay competitive. Hopefully knock something down with a single bullet before baseball season gets rolling. Let's see what else. Just taking care of some of the names here. Grant is out. I don't know why he would come through that. Oh, because he's still got a projection. All right, we're good. And PJ is the only other one. So hopefully somebody out there had a little better night than I did. Hopefully somebody took something down or made a few bucks. I think we are good to go here. All right. Late news ends up killing me with kids, says Mamba. Yeah, I can see that. I can't imagine how people who have kids and obligations outside of like sitting here for DFS can have any kind of shot at making late swaps and everything. It's just, yeah, tough. It's tough enough for me sitting here, so I can only imagine when you got responsibilities and everything. Chris felt lucky to break even last night. Yeah, that was that kind of night for sure, just the way that one went. Yeah, hit that like button like Mamba says. I appreciate that. So a couple different slates tonight. FanDuel running a 4-gamer. That's, I should note that on the site too. FanDuel running a 4-gamer that just goes through the 8 o'clock games. 7:30 and then 3 8 o'clock games. So it'll be a nice little sprint on FanDuel. And then DraftKings has those games and the 2 10 o'clock games. They're playing the full 6-game slate over on DraftKings. So we'll have a little bit of back and forth differences. You can see some of the guys on well, you can't see it yet, but you will see some of the guys on the FanDuel side don't have data. They do have projections because I just, the way that the model works, I have to have them in there for the DraftKings side to populate. So if you're playing the late slate, you do have projections for those 2 late games on FanDuel. They're just not in the Sims because they're not part of the main slate. Projections are up on rotoscouts.com for anybody who's not familiar. Projections are free, at least for right now. Use them however you want. If you want to take them and aggregate them across the industry and put them in with averages and then sell that to somebody else, we're perfectly fine with that around here. No issues. Not going to harp on it. Not going to sue anybody. Not going to come after anybody. Data's data. Whatever, man. Some of you know what I'm talking about. A little bit of silliness going on. Always drama. Why is there always drama in the DFS industry? I don't really understand it. Can't we all just get along? Anyway, it's an interesting looking slate on both sides. We'll pull up the Vegas board to get us started today. Top of the list, good game to start us off. Phoenix and Boston. Boston favored by 5.5 at home, 225.5 point total. Some push and pull with that one in terms of where I want to land some of the Phoenix guys. got burnt a little bit by lowering KD, a little bit too much, accounting for Boston and their D, and giving the model the adjustments and everything the last time around. KD went out and put up a season high point total that last time, had a monster game. So I'm kind of trying to get it dialed in. That was I forget whether it was Beal or Booker. I think it was Beal that was out for that one. So obviously there was a bit of an uptick there, production-wise anyway, that we don't have tonight. We're trying to get zeroed in on the Phoenix guys in that one, but I think it should be a good game. Plan on watching that one. 225.5 point total there is juicy enough, given all the talent in that game, all the stars in that game. Clippers at the Bulls. Clippers favored by 6 on the road, but Kawhi and James Harden are both questionable. The other day it was Kawhi and Paul George. Today it's Kawhi and James Harden. Clippers favored by 6, 214 point total in that one. Not the best offensive environment, but definitely some pieces. No Kobe White for Chicago is creating a little bit of upward momentum for some of the like Ios of the world. Wizards at Houston. Houston favored by 8.5, 227.5 point total there. Sixers at the Bucks. Bucks favored by 7.5 at home, 219 point total. Late game between the Knicks and the Blazers. Knicks favored by 11.5 on the road out west in Portland, 204 point total. Ugly game. Still some up in the air too with Simons, whether or not he goes. And as I was just saying, we lost Jeremy Grant and Jabari Walker from the Portland side. Knicks have OG back. Play out of their mind basketball when OG's healthy and active. Their plus-minus numbers for the time he's been on the court are insane if you've seen any of those tweets going around in the Knicks fan sphere. But it doesn't exactly drive the offense through the roof. So there will be pieces and parts from that one for sure, but it'll be interesting to see how much they come up with that really low total. And then a good one to end the night, Dallas at OKC. OKC favored by 11, though, because there's no Luka. 234.5 point total. Nice meaty game. Plenty of talent still left in there, but obviously no Luka is a big ding to that overall game environment and that overall the top end quality of that game. But a lot to work with on this slate. And not that many. It's not completely terrible, at least right now, with the known unknowns. We got some of the Portland news. We do have Anthony Simons still questionable. Probables, we have Nas Little, Torrey Craig, Giannis, Patrick Beverley. Questionable, Eric Gordon, Jaylen Brown, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, 4 decent-sized names, 3 very big names, and then Eric Gordon. And then a little bit less important, Malik Beasley, Marjon Beauchamp, and Julian Phillips. And then out already, Josh Okogie, Kristaps Porzingis, in addition to the guys that I have been out, that are out or have been out all season, who I don't typically name. So Okogie, Kristaps Porzingis, Neemias Queta, Russ Westbrook, Kobe White, Robert Covington, Joel Embiid, DeAnthony Melton, Terquavian Smith. Sixers still missing a lot of parts. Chris Middleton, Marvin Bagley, Rashawn Holmes, a couple big men out for Washington. Landry Shamet also still out. Alperen Şengün, who's out till at least the playoffs. Cam Whitmore, Luka Doncic, big one there. Julius Randle, Mitch Robinson still out for the Knicks. And then I didn't do the full accounting for the Blazers because they hadn't reported earlier, but everybody who's been out is out. And then Simons is questionable. It's going to be an interesting slate. Let's get this thing sorted over here. Haven't really looked through the Sims since I've been spending the last half hour getting everything rerun. So, all right, these guys had projections. So they're only on the board because they had projections, so it doesn't matter here. Just take Jeremy Grant out now. Not on the FanDuel slate anyway, and the rerun Sim didn't have him in it. There we are. So, as we can see for the DK slate, Timmy Hardaway, Kyrie Irving, kind of top priorities, followed closely behind by Josh Green, Dante Exum. Anytime we get Luka out, we get some concentration and some upside for these guys because they're very low cost, or there's an underpriced Kyrie Irving with monster per minute upside. So I think it makes a ton of sense to be looking into the Dallas side of things, especially in the backcourt. Not the greatest matchup for them in the world in terms of OKC, the way they play defense, but a reasonable expectation of some scoring there. What's up, boss guy? Yeah, I did. I was jokingly referring to that just a few minutes ago. Yeah, it's I think it's more, it's not really the Sims, it's more sites that aggregate projections and then sell the aggregated projections. So they're going around and they're taking a stochastic projection and they're averaging it with Run Pure and RG and so on and so forth, all the different major sites, and then they're providing that as a number. My take on it is, and we were talking about it a little bit in Discord, it's obviously shitty to do. It's very lazy. It's a really, really lazy way to create a product to sell to people. And it gives, you're just mashing numbers together and giving no context if you have no expertise. So there is a little bit of a moral issue and you shouldn't do that. But I'm questioning, where any kind of legal stance would land, because it would come down to what's in the terms and conditions. If you don't have it ruled out in terms and conditions, and I don't recall ever seeing a terms and conditions, I'm sure there is one, but I'd be surprised if that's in there. So if you don't really delineate what people can and can't use that number for, if they're going and creating a completely different data point by using that number as part of a larger average or as part of a formula that they came up with, I don't know how much legal leg he has to stand on outside of just canceling their access to his product and just, not doing business with them anymore. But if they're paying for a product and it's just out there with no stipulations as to how it can and can't be used, unless they're going and on their site publishing like, this column is the stochastic projection, this column is the Run Pure projection, this column is the RG projection, and then this is our average. If they're doing it that way, yeah, you got an easy way to go after them. If they're just creating an average, I'm not entirely sure unless you stipulate that. Apparently RG does stipulate. I love that Kush was doing some research in it in our Discord. He was talking to some of the guys from RG, and it sounds like RG actually does have some stipulations about that. And maybe Stochastic does now as well. Just having been there behind the scenes back then, I don't recall ever having seen something like that and not really discussing it, but who knows? Not for me to say one way or the other. As I tweeted out with my link to the projections for rotoscouts today, use them however you want. Aggregate them, take them, publish them on your website with our name on it. That's perfectly fine by me. Free advertising there. Projections are free right now anyway, so take them, use them however you want. Chris says, Terry, is there any chance you're planning on selling an Excel for DFS course anytime soon? I mean, it's not, I don't know about something to sell, but it's something that we could probably, and I'm bad with making these commitments and then not following through. But it's something I can think about for, doing a little video of. There also are some really good videos out there. J187, who's in our Discord, may or may not be in the YouTube chat here hanging out today. But he works over at Stochastic now. But before he landed over there, he had created, and we linked him when I was at Stochastic and everything. He had created some very good how to create your own spreadsheet, how to create your own projection model. I know he did one for football. I'm not sure what he did for other sports, but like once you get the fundamentals down of how like just Excel works and how functions work and everything, you can kind of just port that knowledge along from sport to sport. And then it's just a matter of, creating your formulas for how much to weight things and all. Yeah, it's something I'll keep in mind for, like, it would probably just be a free video or something like that. I don't really see it as, as something to sell to people, but maybe. I don't know. I'll think about it. Mamba, firing shots. Maybe go after Tom for firing everybody that was good, changing the name to something bad, and having overpriced services. Good stuff, buddy. Yeah, listen, the biggest objection over there, I think, is the pricing these days. It is just bonkers asking people for that kind of number when the vast majority of people out there are just putting in a couple of lineups for a few bucks and trying to have some fun and have a shot at winning some money. It's insane to ask for multiple hundreds of dollars a month. Just completely broken pricing over there. There you go, Stephen Leibowitz. Appreciate that, buddy. Glad to answer Excel questions also. I used to teach that app all the time. Only a little rusty. Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, there's so much that in a lot of these files and models and everything, I put it together 6, 7, 8 years ago, and it hasn't changed much. So it's like, all right, how does my home run model work? Like, I gotta think it through. And then sometimes I'll just hit a wall formula-wise too, where it's like, all right, I gotta figure out how to do that. and you got to kind of just figure out how the structure of the statement that you need for Excel goes. And honestly, if you're looking to learn Excel, you can self-teach pretty effectively just with using Google. Just Google like how do I do this in whatever you're trying to accomplish in Excel, and there's great like tips that give you the full formula and examples and everything. There's site after site after site that has free help for that, so it's actually not all that hard to self-teach. But it is something I'll definitely keep in mind as something people might want. So getting back on track, obviously we're seeing some massive numbers on the DK side of things here with some of that concentration. Just look at all these low prices coming out of Dallas. You've got Corey Kispert stuck in the middle of that group. He looks very, very good on the DraftKings site, 5,400, both forward spots. A lot of upside there, 51% of the top 150, 42% win rate. I believe that's got us ahead of the field on Mr. Kispert. He's very popular. One of overall the it's like the 7th or 8th most popular overall guy on the entire slate, but our 51% in the top 150 is basically doubling up the public exposure there. And against a 42% win rate, that's not bad. That win rate is well ahead of where the field is on Corey Kispert. So you don't have to necessarily put him in half of all your lineups. But if you're getting a fairly aggressive share in the 36 to 40% range, somewhere around that, I think you're perfectly fine. And I think you do have upward trajectory into around half your lineups if you want him. He's just an effective player and an effective player at an effective price. On the FanDuel slate, we're getting massive shares of him because a lot of these guys aren't even here. So he's one of the few the crossover players. 62.3% winner on FanDuel, 83% of the top 150. Just with missing bodies there, plenty for him to do. He played 35.9 minutes the other night, put up 27.4 FanDuel points. It's not quite where we need him, but I've got him going back for the same 36 minutes tonight, and projected a little bit over 30 on the FanDuel slate, a little bit higher than that on DraftKings. I think he's got easy reach. I think the medians are within easy reach. And we've got upside into the low mid 40s, probably somewhere in that territory. So at price, he's just a really effective mid-range weapon. So I like Kispert on both sides. The issue with some of the Dallas guys, Josh Green, quite notably, 0.67 per minute over the course of the full season, just a 12.8% usage rate under normal circumstances. I think I closed the window where I had Wowie open. I did. Defeats the whole purpose of setting the thing up in advance if you're just going to close the tab, dum-dum. Give me a second here to recreate what I had done. So we're obviously looking for no Luka numbers for the season for these guys. We've got a few other pieces that need to come out of here, though, I think. Give me half a sec while I try and recreate the Dallas environment so I can give you guys the accurate numbers. All right, no Luka. Who else is in here that was... Seth Curry not on the team anymore? I'm just looking at the full season, so there's guys in here that aren't on the team anymore that would, like, a guy like Curry would have an impact to those backcourt numbers. All right, I think we're probably about right. So for the season, with no Luka, for Josh Green, we go to just 0.72. It's a 5/100ths of a point jump. There's a little bit of expected offense and pace in this game, but it's still a pretty low per minute mark. You're obviously just looking at him as a price-based play. He's not at all expensive. 3,700 at both forward spots. But it's not a true, like, he's not stepping into a situation where I think there's a massive ceiling on a player like that. You're just looking to get, you're obviously looking to get your median plus. But I don't know that I'm putting his ceiling into even like the 30s. 3,700, it doesn't have to be. You get 25, 26 points, you're perfectly fine there with Josh Green. But But there are a lot of clunkers in store for Josh Green as well. 16 FanDuel points in 23.6 minutes the other night. We're giving him more time than that, but he's got to climb further. So not my most favorite option. And the same applies for Timmy Hardaway at a higher overall per minute mark. Timmy Hardaway in 468 minutes, 976 possessions all season with no Luka, does jump to 0.95 per minute on the FanDuel scale, 1.03 on DraftKings. So there is an appreciable jump for Timmy Hardaway. He's just one of the least consistent, least reliable actual producers in fantasy basketball, at least in my experience. So he doesn't come with any kind of, he comes with just what I said. He comes with a, don't love the days where we have to play Timmy Hardaway kind of a thing. But it's not even like a full asterisk because he only costs $4,000. Shooting guard, small forward eligible, great flexibility, landed in 54% of winning lineups and 73% of our top 150 lineups across 50,000 sims. So obviously Timmy is very, very valuable today. Stepping into an enhanced role, stepping into an enhanced upside for offense, enhanced production. It's just, I wish it was any other name on the back of that jersey, which is not the way you want to make decisions. So yes, we're playing him. Yes, we get aggressive about him on DraftKings, but you don't have to like it, and neither do I, which is why I'm not playing on DraftKings today. And then there's Kyrie. Kyrie jumps to 1.45 FanDuel points per minute without Luka, 1.49 DraftKings points without Luka. At 8,900 on the late slate on FanDuel, fine, but more to the point, at 8,400 point guard, shooting guard eligible on the main slate on DraftKings, he is an absolute smash spot. 46.49% win rate, 56% of the top 150. A lot of true ceiling on Kyrie at that price in this matchup. So love the spot for Kyrie. Definitely think you can get some Timmy Hardaway and some Josh Green, even though they're a little bit less comfortable. And then there's Dante Exum. Just 3,600. Pulling his weight, 41.1% winner, 49% of the top 150. Not at all expensive. Exum goes to 0.94 FanDuel points per minute, 0.96 DraftKings. It's a little bit of an uptick. He's not the worst in terms of his typical output, his typical per minute rates. 19.1 minutes a game over the 40 games this year. We're giving him a little bit more than that to do today, 24. But he did go almost 25 in the last game. Put up 22.4 FanDuel points. It's about on his typical production with a little bit of an expectation of an uptick. At price, looks very, very strong on DraftKings. If you're playing on the late slate on FanDuel, I do think considering that you're at 5.44 points per dollar, 5.28 points per dollar, 5.17 for Timmy, and then Kyrie's obvious. I do think all three of those guys, though, with Kyrie, are in play for that FanDuel late slate, that two-gamer. But on DraftKings, total priorities. The question becomes how many lineups do you want? 4 of those guys. And then you can see we've also got a logjam of Houston guys right here. So now you're talking about, do I want 4 guys from Dallas, 3 guys from Houston, and Corey Kispert as my lineup, and a center as my lineup, I guess? You can go back to Danny Gafford. So I do think it would probably pay. Maybe you create groups where you're doing a max 2 of Timmy, Kyrie, Green, Exum. Probably 3 is fine. I'm sure we've got lineups in here. As I'm talking about, let me just check, actually. The vast majority of these are 3. There are some 4s that got up to our top on the Ace Mind sim, but most of them are 3. On the entire screen of like 30 lineups, 25 lineups, there's maybe 3 or 4 that are 4-mans, and then like every other lineup has 3 Dallas guys. So I'd probably group it off to 3. I think that's probably appropriate, and I would do it, among these guys. I wouldn't necessarily include like a Gafford in that group because he's differentiated enough positionally and expectation-wise and how he gets his fantasy points that you're not really as worried about that in relation with these guys, where these guys just kind of have the potential to cross one another off a little bit. You don't see Durant. Travis Duarte, what's up, buddy? You don't see Durant where? I'm sure he's in here. This isn't the whole thing. There he is. I just saw him. Where'd he go? There he is. 9,500, 5.2% winner on DraftKings, 4.6% winner on FanDuel. Or, excuse me, 4% of the top 150 at 9,500 at power forward only. And then on FanDuel, he's 10,000 power forward and small forward, smaller slate. We've got him 11% of the time in winners, 7% of our top 150 lineups. As I was saying at the top of the show with KD, it is a little bit tricky this spot. You know, he's got KD upside, he's got superstar upside. And he did go for a season high in scoring against Boston the last time when I'd given him a little bit bigger of a ding. So KD out of the 3 stars from Phoenix is the guy who is currently closest for today's projections to his season-long number. They do get a little bit of a haircut, but I didn't really put my thumb on the scale. I just let the model do its thing. Where in a lot of these, situationally every day, you got to go through player by player and really suss out exactly where it should be. So I'm kind of letting KD do his thing a little bit here. But he's definitely in there, definitely in the mix. One of the players on the board with, higher ceiling overall, one of the best per minute guys available. So love KD in most situations, but not the best matchup for Phoenix. Obviously better on the FanDuel side where it's shorter. Let's jump in and we'll go a little positionally here. See how we do. All right, so we took care of the 3 Dallas guys. And then we've still got No Şengün in Houston. So just like, not that these guys play center, but the offense has to come from somewhere now. And it isn't going to be coming from the center spot. So there's a bit of expectation uptick for these guys. In his last game, Freddie VanVleet played 39 minutes, put up nearly 50 FanDuel points. It's a reasonable game for an $8,100 point guard, $8,300 on the DraftKings slate. We've got him projected in that neighborhood again. I think he's got upside beyond that. We know Freddie VanVleet can get himself on a hot shooting night into the 60s. So expectation around here, but upside for sure. At 8,100 at point guard only, 54.8% of winning lineups on the 4-game FanDuel slate, 63% of our top 150. Keep in mind, again, as we talk, FanDuel is only 4 games, so these numbers are going to be high. On DraftKings, nearly 30% of winning lineups and got to him 46% of the time in our top 150. There's a lot of weight just right here in those top 150 lineups. It's the only other guy above 10% outside of this top group. It's a lot of weight at the guard spots, especially coming out of Dallas and Houston for DraftKings tonight. Amen Thompson didn't have a great game the other day. Played 22-6, put up just under 15 FanDuel points. But he's been very good for the season, 1.12 over the course of the entire season on just about league average usage, 1.08 DraftKings points per minute. At 5,200 shooting guard and small forward eligible, he looks very good on DraftKings, 40% with 47% exposure in the top 150. Maybe you make the bigger group and you extend it out so you're getting, I would do like a Dallas group and maybe a Houston group separately and then one big group of all these guys where you're saying include at least but not more than kind of a statement. Might be a good idea. Not necessarily on FanDuel, just because these guys are going to come together on FanDuel and there's only so many choices. And I feel like if you're doing anti-field things, like the field would probably still on FanDuel start making some little groups and boxing some guys off. And for a 4-game slate, I don't think that's necessary. I think if anything, you can get differentiated by playing more of those guys together who math out perfectly fine. But on DraftKings, there is good cause to get a little bit broader with it. Dillon Brooks. Let's talk Dillon Brooks. Mr. 13.7 points in everybody's lineup with 29 minutes the other day. Nobody likes Dillon Brooks. I don't like Dillon Brooks. I didn't give him anything today. In fact, I think I took a little bit away from where he was supposed to be today. And he's still coming up at 61% winner on FanDuel. 66% of the top 150. I don't like it. Whoever brought it up the other day and said, I can't believe we have to hear about how Dillon Brooks is a good play. I'm telling you right now, I agree wholeheartedly with you. I don't like Dillon Brooks. I don't want to have to play him. But again, we're in this situation, especially on the FanDuel slate, with 4 games to work with. It just maths out. If you want to skip him for total disappointment in so many games over the course of time, for his 0.68 per minute number, I get it. But we're at that number. We're thereabouts for today. And he just crushes FanDuel value. On DraftKings, he's coming up as a 27% winner at 4,500, both shooting guard and small forward eligible, and you're getting to him at a 32% clip. That puts us ahead of the field, but he's popular on DraftKings. At worst, I think you want to have him around the field if you're building out 150 lineups. If you build one lineup, if you build three lineups, and you don't want to play Dillon Brooks, that's the spot to not necessarily do it. If I'm building three, he's probably still in at least one of them on DraftKings. If I'm building three on FanDuel, he's probably in two of them. Right? That's just straightforward there. But once you get out beyond that, once you get out to I'm building 20, I'm building 150, it's would be a mistake to completely leave him out. Just, that's inserting bias into the process. So just because we don't like a guy, just because we're not comfortable, and believe me, Dillon Brooks is I would name that list the Dillon Brooks list if I was making a list of players that I didn't like in NBA. Timmy Hardaway would be on that list. But he does look like a play. So take him for what he's worth, 4,500. The price is right for the expectation of minimal production, and know that this clunker is completely in play once again. Nothing to stop him from going out there and repeating this performance exactly. Getting off the Dillon Brooks train, really like the spot for Ayo Dosunmu. Mentioned no Kobe White today. Ayo popping up to 42.3% winner on FanDuel, 45% of the top 150, 26.3%, and 34% of your top 150 on DraftKings. Looks like a very nice play on both sites. 5,900 is a good price for his production. He's been at 0.78 per minute for the season. Get back to the Bulls. I've got him tonight at 0.88, and he's seen an uptick just in... Come on. I figured out how to not have that thing pop up where it accidentally pops up the teams in other rectangle, other input boxes on Wowie. I just forgot to do it. If you just click off to the side before you click in the box, it won't do that. That was a real pain in the ass. So Ayo's been at up to 0.81 since the start of February. And then if we take Kobe White out, we gain even more ground. If we take Kobe White out, we get him to 0.93 in 154 minutes, 310 possessions since February 1st, which is a reasonably okay sample. It's not big. It's a handful of games, but at least it's somewhat representative of tonight's situation. I've got him under that mark, kind of in between what the pure since the start of February production has been and what the without Kobe White out there production has been. Fairly comfy with that. So I think Ayo looks very good. I'm sure DeRozan, does he have guard eligibility? Maybe not. Yeah, DeRozan's just both forward spots on DraftKings, small forward only on FanDuel. And then Caruso should be in the mix here somewhere. There he is. So Caruso benefits from the same situation. He's been playing more minutes. Played 36.7 the other night. Put up 43.9 FanDuel points. In the same situation, his sample's only 89 minutes, 174 possessions. So we take it a little bit lighter. There's not a giant difference between the 154-minute sample and the 89-minute sample. They're both on the smaller overall side. But the 154 gives us a couple additional games in there of representation. But in the smaller sample for Caruso, he's up at 1.26 FanDuel points per minute with no Kobe. So obviously that's a big, big jump. He's a pretty good per minute performer anyway, 0.92 for the season. In a raw sense, including all the minutes since the start of February, Caruso in 461 minutes has been right in line with his season long. It's 0.93. So there's an appreciable jump for him in this situation as well. On FanDuel, he came up 38.3% of the time, 42% winner. On DraftKings, at 5,500, with a lot more bodies available on DraftKings, he's just kind of an also-ran play. Or he's solidly playable from the middle, let's say. 13.2% winner, 14.6% of the top 150. But he's not a top priority like a lot of these other guys are. That said, could make him an interesting tournament play because, where he lands while everybody's focused on getting some Dallas and some Houston could be a reasonable alternative, a reasonable pivot from one of those guys. We are slightly ahead of the field. Handful of points ahead of the field in terms of where the field is exposed to him. For IO, we're nicely ahead of the field. Not quite double, but closing in on with a win rate that is a lot stronger than the field. So I would bounce IO somewhere between like 25 and 35% exposure across 150. I think makes sense there. And then on the FanDuel slate, where they're both going to be more popular, FanDuel, we're again well ahead of the field on IO. And probably same thing for Caruso. Yeah, we're not quite double the field on both of them on the FanDuel slate, but good as. So again, just plenty of room. And both of them have much higher win rates than their public exposure. I like both of those spots. Especially, again, as pivots, as mixers on DraftKings with a little less weight than a lot of these priority guys up top. Not bad over a bunch of lineups. That's a spot where if you're building 3, if you're building 20, those are guys where, you might mix them in since everybody and their brother is going to be going to these guys. Maybe you mix in a couple of the alternatives. Especially if you're like, say, want to get away from Dylan Brooks. Obviously, you're talking about different price points, but there's reasonably good plays to get you there. You can go from Dylan Brooks, find 1,000 more. You're downgrading another spot to get that 1,000, but potentially upgrading this spot by more than that dollar value, given the uptick expected for Caruso tonight. SGA looks reasonable on DraftKings, a 12% win rate. We got him just 4% of the time, but 10-4, not a bad price for him. On FanDuel, on that late slate, is at 11-4, gives you just 4.8. Probably would be a non-priority in the 2-game. I mean, it's a 2-gamer, so never mind. I'm not going to talk about the FanDuel late slate. That's your projection. Do with it what you will. 4% exposure in the top 150 on DraftKings is interesting, though. Let's see where that puts us relative to the field. It's below the field. Field is almost right in line with what this win rate is. It's SGA, so again, if you wanted to go out to the field's level with SGA, I don't think you're ever making a mistake necessarily. It's just, given his popularity, given his price tag, the way that the numbers are coming together, it does suggest an undercut while still having him. But since the win rate is where it is and the public's not like way down the line away from the win rate, I do think you can zero in somewhere around 10-12% if you want to get a little bit more SGA in your life without really hamstringing any lineups. I skipped over Tyus Jones. He also looked fairly good on both sites. Mid-teens or high teens marks on FanDuel across the board. On DraftKings, kind of more in the mid-teens range. 6,200 point guard only on DK, 6,800 on FanDuel. Been right on a point per minute for the season. Little bit of upside, but 34.2 minutes the other night, 19.5 FanDuel points. I feel like we've gotten a fair number of clunkers out of Tyus. He seems to be a yes or a no, right? He seems a little bit binary, where there's not a lot of like just, hey, deliver me a solid average game. Right? Well, I guess you can't not deliver an average game, but you get me. So I feel like he's a lot of hit and miss. Obviously, that one highlighted the last time out was kind of a big miss. At 6,800, 19 points isn't going to get you there. Same with 62 on DraftKings. But he does have upward momentum. He's got a reasonably good game environment. 227.5 in that one. Feels like a spot where, with the available bigs, could just be a lot of loose guard play on both sides in that game. We've got Kuzma. And then, like, all guards. Jeff Green. There's not a lot of size in this game. Bagley and Holmes both out. Şengün out. Got Jock Landale. He'll see some run. I don't think he's going to be all that crazy, but I don't know what he's priced at off the top of my head, so I don't want to rule him out until we get there. But yeah, I could see this just being a run and gun kind of messy, guard-oriented game. So feeds the idea of Tyus Jones having around this kind of value. I don't hate it. He definitely is a guy we've gotten to through the season. Joshy Hart had a monster the other day. Ended up playing his full 39 after I was saying, I'm going to lower him to 38. A human 38 after he's been playing into the 40s basically every night. After Tibbs leaves him out there, hell, high water, blowouts, whatever's going on. Doesn't seem to care, just runs him into the ground. But Hart responds. Had a great game the other day, 62 FanDuel points in 39 minutes. I'm pulling him back again to the 38-minute mark. I do think that's correct, but he projects well. Looks like a reasonably good play on DraftKings, 11.2% win rate. Again, another guy that we just got 4% of the time in our top 150. And I have to reload the page to get where his public ownership is. It's probably a little below the public exposure. Yeah, a little below. It's almost the same difference as SGA. His public exposure is also like right around where his win rate is. So the same thing basically applies. You can take him up to about that win rate, up to about 12% if you want. The sims suggest getting a little bit under on him. But I have no real issue at 7,300. The production has been there. It's totally justified. The price isn't even that bad. Jaylen Brown, still questionable. If he goes, he looks all right. 9% winner on DraftKings. He's an 11% winner on FanDuel. We got to him under those rates on both sites. That's out of that early game, so we'll have that news. He's another one. It's almost, again, the exact same thing there. The public exposure is right around a little bit higher than his win rate. But if you wanted to go out to 10%, assuming he plays, totally fine. On FanDuel, with less to work with, I feel like we're going to be light. Yeah, we're like a third of the projected ownership on FanDuel. So that's interesting. With so few spots, the field is getting to Jaylen, and we're not. The field is well out ahead of his win rate on FanDuel. And again, like 3 times our exposure. So we're seeing kind of a strong undercut for Jaylen on the FanDuel slate, which is interesting. Way fewer good players available there. He's been at 1.13 for the season. He did miss their last game. KP also out for this one. So one to keep an eye on. If he doesn't go, there's a boost for Derek White, who's down here. Derek White put up 44.7 in 35 minutes as a very popular piece in their last game. I think you go right back to him at about that kind of level, that kind of expectation. His price is right around that anyway. On DraftKings, he's a little low price for that kind of upside. FanDuel took care of it a little bit at 7,900. But if you had Derek White in the expectation that it would become, he'd probably land more like 82, 84, somewhere around there in pure pricing. So there's a little bit of a discount still available for him and would just look very good. He looks playable at worst right now on both sites under normal circumstances. Only upward trajectory, I think, for Derek White from here. Patty Connaughton looking a little bit playable on FanDuel for 4,000. On DraftKings, with more to choose from, not nearly as much of a priority, but does have a little bit of value at 3,400. Not completely awful. Mamba. That's bold, my friend. Gafford was the best trade in the last decade. Finally gets to play with talent. It's pretty good for him. I don't know if it's the best trade in the last decade. I'd have to think about that. But, my team's OG Anunoby and Precious Achua from Garbage comes into mind. Not Garbage. RJ and IQ are good, but that helped the Knicks more. But, it's definitely a good pickup and definitely good for the player to, like you said, be able to play with talent, expose what he can truly do. I'm a loser till I win the Millie. Brooks or Koulibaly, same price on DK. That one, I believe, is pretty firmly Dylan Brooks, unfortunately, in the head-to-head there. Yeah, Koulibaly's down here. 0.70 per minute out of Koulibaly on DraftKings, 0.71 per minute for the season out of Dillon Brooks. Technically slightly better, with a little bit of reasonable uptick expected for both guys. But Koulibaly just doesn't get there at 45. I'm not saying he can't succeed, can't win. Obviously, you got 30 out of him in 32 on the FanDuel scale, rather. 30 FanDuel points in 32 minutes. If he does that for this price, golden. And there's nothing to say that he can't. Again, it's just going to be a scrappy, ugly kind of a game down there, I think. So, math, Dillon Brooks, faith, neither. If I had to put my faith on it, God, it's definitely not Dillon Brooks if I'm going by just bias and faith and everything. But again, we want to focus on numbers, and numbers strongly say that it's Dillon Brooks. The same upside is there for Koulibaly, no doubt about it. I know it sounds like I'm hedging my bets. You're welcome. I'm a loser till I win the millie. Just don't blame me when Dillon Brooks goes up in flames and completely doesn't work out. I'll have him too, I promise. I hope it's clear how much I can't stand having to recommend Dillon Brooks. If you can find any other reasonable play that maths out similarly, by all means play him. I wish Koulibaly was right here. I wish these were Koulibaly's numbers, just a little bit lower so that I could say we can get away from Dillon Brooks. He is an okay enough pivot. I've got him back to 32 minutes tonight. So, I mean, if you're choosing a direct pivot, that is probably the right guy to have named. Can I find him? Anything? Let me see. Now you got me looking if I can goose the number for Koulibaly a little bit to help this. I'm not gonna. It's not specifically to help this. It's more let me make sure that I've got him right rather than let me orient it so that people can get Koulibaly instead of Brooks. Right? That's not what I'm doing. But now that you point that out to me, it is an important enough spot at same price with enhanced situation for both guys. That let's take a look. So let's see, no homes. Let me just zip this down to Washington real quick. All right, Bagley, Holmes, Shamet. Those are the main guys. I can maybe give him 0.02 of a point per minute of additional upside, which wouldn't really move the needle all that much. He does go up to a 0.68 per minute, FanDuel 0.66 per minute, DraftKings in 224 minutes, 481 possessions without those three players on the court since the start of February. Let's zip it back to the start of November, see if we can gain any ground. This is Bilal Koulibaly that we're looking at, everybody, if you're just tuning in. 0.72. Oh, that's right. I was looking at a different screen. So he's actually down at 0.68. But for the season in this situation, he goes 0.72 FanDuel, 0.71 DraftKings, which is a hundredth of a point higher. I think we've got him pretty zeroed in on where he could be. I could give him, let's see, like that minus that. What does the model just want to give him? No nudge. I can maybe give him a point. Given that, if I can justify him to 0.72, it basically gives him back a point. You might find a little bit of an uptick in the next projections update for Koulibaly. Minor. probably not enough to put it over the top. Still be below where Dillon Brooks is projected at the same price. But it might close the gap a little bit. I still back the math on Dillon Brooks, and that would be gun to my head. Oh, God, no. Gun to my head, I would just probably try and run. Certainly wouldn't recommend Dillon Brooks, but it is the correct, quote-unquote, decision between the two still, even if I give Koulibaly a little bit. But I'm going to keep him highlighted. That's I'm glad you asked that. I'm glad you shouted him out at the same price because that is an important potential inflection point. So it's one to watch. I'll put more thought into it before the next update after the show. Let's keep on rolling here. Look around for some other guys. FanDuel-wise, plenty of Dame is available. 11.1% winner. Got to him 6% of the time. On DraftKings, a little bit better looking. 9% winner, 10% exposure in the top 150. Dame for 8,600. Just, that price still feels good buying that player at that price. 1.23 DraftKings points per minute. Total ceiling capability in any given slate. Philly greatly diminished on their side. So I don't think we're... What's the spread in that? 7.5 point spread. Vegas not expecting a total blowout. So I think we're not really sweating blowout run there by any means. Giannis just probable by all means. If you got Giannis out for whatever reason, fire up more Dame than this. He would take a jump. And then you'd have other pieces from Milwaukee looking pretty good. Patty Connaughton, again, just I know that's where I left off before, but just on price, it's pushing him through a little bit with a 24-minute expectation. What do we have? Beasley and Beauchamp both questionable as well. So another spot to maybe keep an eye on for maybe even a little bit more of an uptick after that. 3,400, price is right. It's at least functional as a lower end value play, and another guy who is way, way less on the radar than all these guys. Connaughton's just a 0.65 per minute player, 0.66 on DraftKings, though. Under normal circumstances, we're talking about a 10.2% usage rate, which I'm sure is the lowest among all guards today. Yep. 10.5. Who's the 10.5? Matty Thybulle. Never a guy whose usage rate you want to be higher than yours. But that's the case for Pat Connaughton. So something to consider with the Connaughton play. Dante DiVincenzo on DraftKings looks like he's been recently. A very playable win rate at 8.5%, but just 2% exposure, probably getting him a little bit less than the field over there. Reasonably good upside for Devo. Got to get out there and hit his threes, obviously, but been taking plenty of them. Makes plenty of them. A little tiny bit less to do in the new configuration with OG returning. But I think there's still plenty of upside, and the price is not bad, 7,100. It's at worst fair. 4.91 points per dollar. On the FanDuel late slate, you're getting 4.79. Probably deprioritizes them a little bit, but again, you're only talking about 2 games over there. Derek White, again, just keep an eye on Jalen for Derek White upside. Bradley Beal not really landing on FanDuel at all. Little bit on DraftKings, 6.8% winner, 2.6% of the top 150. Who would have thunk it? Bradley Beal for only 6,700 on DraftKings. Not really a priority. Both guard spots. It's been around a point per minute on the site over the course of the full season. A little bit of diminishment across the board when all those guys are together, and then they're going up against Boston. Never a good situation against that defense. So, don't love the Beal play. I think you can sneak him into a few lineups on DK, and then at 8,000 on FanDuel, he's just mispriced. Didn't get him at all in our top 150. 0.71% of all winning lineups across 50,000 sims. Not a good result for Mr. Beal. He's owned in the low single digits on the FanDuel slate in projections. It's not to say he's completely without ability to get to a decent score, but the price is just wrong. For what he's been this year, 0.97 points per minute. Price is just not correct. Jordan Poole, another one. Nobody's favorite, least of all mine. 16% winner, though. 14% of the top 150. In a per minute sense, in a true ceiling, if he has his best game kind of a sense, he is one of the higher end players rather, from the Washington side of that loose Washington-Houston game. But he doesn't math out nearly as strong as a lot of these guys. Has disappointing game after disappointing game in a disappointing season. It's been a .94 per minute performer all season with 25% usage on top. A lot of games that look like this, just 26 and change minutes, 20 fantasy points. Just not going to get you there most of the time. Has not. 4.8% winner, 2% of the top 150 on DraftKings. Much more of a priority on the shorter FanDuel slate. You do have to have him if you're building multiple lineups over there. On DraftKings, is a lot more easily skippable. Jalen Brunson, playable on DraftKings, but not a priority. Obviously, they're ceiling there any given slate. The production has been a little bit cooler since his return from being out a couple weeks ago, but again, monster upside any given slate, and he's had a great year, 1.24 DraftKings points per minute. On the short FanDuel slate, 4.69 points per dollar at 92. Probably doesn't math out great. Kyle Lowry, a little bit of FanDuel value at 5,000. Doesn't really have it at 4,900 on DraftKings. Afterthought at best on DK. 0.76 per minute. Put up 18 FanDuel points in 21 minutes the other night. Don't love that spot. Maxey not drawing all that much from a fairly high price. 1.14 per minute for the season for Maxey. 27% usage. Plenty of weight of expectations from him in the offense, but not truly delivering the per minute numbers to justify even 8,900. 9,000 would be too much, but he should probably be more in the 82 to 85 range. It would make him a little bit more effective. Even on a very short slate, we're not getting the money to pay for Maxey's production. Obviously capable of going into the stratosphere with any given game, but based on the season-long marks, based on what we're at for tonight, which is... What is going on with this sort? Oh, all right. Houston wasn't selected. Now I got to reselect the games. Pain in the ass. I've got Maxey all the way up at... exactly his season-long number. So I gave him one, and is what he is, kind of a spot for today. You can maybe give him a little bit more. They are picking up a few possessions, but that's where the model got him to that. Going up against a mid-range Milwaukee defense. I could see him having a little bit of upside beyond this, just in his raw ability sense, but I don't think I'd give him any more than he's getting today. Oubre playable, Harden playable on FanDuel. Neither one is priority on DraftKings. Harden, if assuming he's out there today, like I said earlier today, it's Kawhi and Harden questionable. Last time around, it was Paul George and Kawhi questionable. If you get this situation where two of them are out and one of them's in, that third banana, the guy who's in, is going to see an uptick regardless of which one it is. So it's just a spot to keep an eye on, I think. With everybody in, Harden lands at 9% winner, 8% of the top 150 on FanDuel, 1% and irrelevant exposure in the top 150 on DraftKings. And then Paul George is right here, 4.8% and 4% exposure on FanDuel, and basically nothing on DraftKings unless there's an uptick, not a priority at all. Devin Booker not really coming through, similar to what I said about Beal. Just everybody's kind of just baked down a little bit from what their ceiling production could be by both the factor of all those guys being there and all the mouths to feed, and then the opponent, the game environment. But nothing to stop Booker from going for one of these. 45.7 in 38 minutes. It's a little bit ahead of the production. A little bit ahead of where I got him projected today. 50 is probably in play still for Booker. Upside beyond that for sure. But it is a spot where he's more likely to be a little bit tamed in his scoring output. And like I said, Kevin Durant is the guy that I leaned into a little bit more, giving him closer to his full season-long production. Nobody else really popping up all that important. Maybe a little Peyton Pritchard if you get no Jalen. Just on virtue of seeing a few additional minutes. That could also apply to Sammy Hauser. As we know, it just kind of depends on what they roll out there. Hopefully it's not a Peyton Pritchard starting. Oh, just kidding. It is actually Sam Hauser's situation like what they did to us the other day. That sucked. Yeah, nobody really else popping for guards. Simon's moderately playable on DraftKings if he goes. If Simons doesn't go, I think we see a jump for Benton, Chris Murray. Both of those guys probably become more relevant, but Benton's already priced at $5,000. Murray at $45,000. I don't know that Murray like boxes out our even our $4,500 Koulibaly or Dylan Brooks. It's another one to at least keep on that list. But with a handful more minutes in his pocket, I don't know that he even gets to that level. Having all three of those options with the same positioning and same price, though, is kind of interesting. That's about it for the guard eligible guys. We'll jump to forwards. Pop into the chat again, see what you guys are talking about. Oh, Mamba, Brooks can be worse than anybody. I know Brooks is shady. I'm willing to burn money. That's what we're doing. Steven Leibowitz, Porzingis to the Celts is a pretty good trade. Yeah, that is another good one. Absolutely. From the last little chunk of time before this season. Trey, what's going on, Trey? Just popping in. Yo. Assume he's just getting back from the gym or work or both. Good to see you, buddy. We just ran down the guards. Is this a fucked up slate or no? Well, they all are. Spring basketball, spring NBA. They're all going to be messy. I don't know why that, at what point I shrunk that window. Give you guys a little bit more screen to look at here. Work. There you go. Yeah, Trey, you missed the top of the show, but it's Dallas and Houston day at the very top of the board for a lot of uncomfortable players like Dylan Brooks, like Timmy Hardaway, Josh Green. A lot of value, though. Luka's out, so just creates a ton of value there. The No Şengün situation just creates a need for other guys to create offense around in Houston. So a lot coming out of those spots. Speaking of, let's see. We already talked about most of these guys. Corey Kispert, we did talk about at the top of the show, but again, looks very good as one of the forward options. Small forward and power forward on DraftKings at 54, giving you 42.7% win rate, 51% of the top 150. And we have room on that where you can come down a little bit from the play still, if you wanted them in the 40% range rather than half of your lineups. I think you're still okay and you're still well ahead of the field. And then on FanDuel, he looks like an absolute priority at 5,300 on the short slate. Amen, we talked about. Josh Green, we've talked about plenty. But again, does look good. Both forward spots, 3,700. If nothing else, it's just price driven. That is a low, low price for the expectation of time. Low per minute performer. Wouldn't expect much beyond 23, call it a few points below to a few points above. 20 to 28, somewhere in that range. Most of the times you roll this slate, and then you've got a few outliers where maybe he cracks 30. You've also got probably more outliers where he lands somewhere around 15, 16 like he did the other day. But again, more time than this. And we've talked about Dylan Brooks. We've talked about plenty. Jason Tatum. There we go. There's a fun, comfy name. 22% winner on 22% across the board on DraftKings. 9,800 both forward spots. One of the higher raw projections overall on the slate. A tough matchup against Phoenix. He didn't have a great performance. He had an okay performance. I think it was somewhere in this territory in their last game. But has trajectory for more than that. 1.30 FanDuel, 1.34 DraftKings points per minute on the season. On the shorter FanDuel slate, 31% of winning lineups, 32% of our top 150. Puts us a nice little chunk ahead of the field on the short FanDuel slate. And then on DraftKings, Again, the same, less than 10 percentage points on both, but on the upward range of that less than 10 percentage points without giving away the exact numbers. So I think getting a little ahead of the field, and it's probably a little bit more room for that, even though it mass out almost exactly to where we got him. Just given the pure ceiling, especially on the 4-game slate, you can get a little bit more. You can squeeze a little bit more Tatum, 35%, somewhere in there. A few additional shares. Kyle Kuzma, another Wizard with plenty to do. Has had a good season, 1.17 points per minute, 30% usage. Very solid opportunity for Kuzma to deliver, and is probably, given the spot, probably a little bit cheap tonight. Just given like what he typically does. For the season, he's been at, actually, you know what? It's a little bit of a downturn for the full season. I think I just used the February number in the projection. Let me double check this. It's not going to make me dislike him if we change him to the full season. So, okay, I did use the full season number. All right. So we're good. Over the course of the full season, we're at 1.17 FanDuel points per minute. Since the start of February, in this situation, he does have a dip to 1.01. 249 minutes, 534 possessions in this kind of environment. But if we do stretch that back out to November, we jump back up to right around the season-long mark. He's 1.13. So it's a little bit of a downtick, but not that much. And it's accounted for in where we have him today. I've got him basically between that 113 and the 117. I got him, like I said, at 115. And we're talking about 0.02 of a point per minute. So it really doesn't matter what the difference there is. So I think Kuzma's fine. 30% winner, 26% of the top 150 on FanDuel, 19.9% winner, and 25% of the top 150 on DraftKings. Hopefully we're a little ahead of the field. Yeah, we're nicely ahead of the field on him. Not like crazy so, but comfortably. On FanDuel, we're like right with the field. Again, shorter FanDuel slate, only 4 games to work with. These guys are going to be more popular. So he looks very good, very playable in the quarter of your lineups on FanDuel. You'll be like right around the field. You do have a little bit more room given the 30% win rate. If you wanted to grab a few 5%-ish more shares, you're perfectly fine doing that. And then on DraftKings, we're already about 10 points ahead of the field. Reasonable justification for doing that. Landing right about here. You go a little bit lower, you go up to 20 and still stay a few points ahead of the field if you wanted to, if you're looking to spread around shares to other guys on the bigger slate. But plenty of justification to get them out to like 25% on DK. DeRozan, 8,400, 18% winner on FanDuel, 22% of the top 150. On DraftKings, 15.4% winner, 11% of the top 150. Pretty effective price tag, 8,400 and 8,200 across sites. Flexible positioning on DraftKings helps a little bit. Came out and put up a 68 in 44 minutes the other night. No Kobe White, so a little bit of reasonable expectation for more. I've gone away from that screen on Wowie, and I'm not going to chew up our time looking for the number again that I already have in my model here. Got him at about 0.05 of a point per minute higher for tonight than his season-long number is. And looks very good for it. So definitely can get exposed to DeRozan on both sites. In terms of where the public is, it's pretty popular. Less so on DraftKings, again, as to be expected. We're a couple points below the field on DK at 11%. And then on FanDuel at 22, we're a little bit even further below. We're about 10 points shy of the field on the FanDuel slate. So effective, playable, looks perfectly fine with clear upside to a ceiling kind of a day. but maybe somebody that you want to undercut, not get quite as over the top as it looks like the field is on FanDuel. If I'm building 3 lineups on FanDuel, he's probably in one of them. If I'm building 20, that's probably where I'd get him more out to like the 5 type range. Denny Avdija looking pretty good on FanDuel. 50.3% winner, nearly 50% of all top 150 lineups. Caruso we talked about already, but again, he looks very good and pretty similar in that range. 2 solid plays out of the mid-range. They're both mid-teens on DraftKings. We got to Denny a little bit less than his win rate, just 11% exposure in the top 150 against a 14% win rate. That puts us below the field. The field is a little above how frequently we saw him in winning lineups. So I would say somewhere between 10 and 15% Denny is probably fine. Some minor haircut from where the field's at. Obviously gains you some protection against that. 19 points in 36 minutes the other night is not going to get it done from basically any price. But we know there's clear path to upside for Denny. 1.01 for the season, 1.03 DraftKings. I skipped somebody up here. Who did I skip? Jabari Smith is an important piece. Jabari, 37.7%. Power forward only on FanDuel, 7,100. At 66 on DraftKings, he lands in 18.6% of winners, but we only got him 9% of the time. So a very different play site to site. 44% of winning of our top 150 and 37% of winning lineups. It's basically double the win rate on FanDuel that he is on DraftKings. Again, shorter slate. The DK ownership puts us well below the field. We're like a quarter of the field. Given that the win rate is like double what our exposure is, you can do the math on where that win rate would put you relative to the field. I don't really have an issue considering him at about this kind of exposure if you want. Take him from 9-10% out to like 18-20. I think you're still okay. You're still going to be below the field by a decent chunk. Maybe you call it 15 instead of 20. Get a little bit more, a little bit closer to the win rate, but still keep it lower than the field. On FanDuel, I assume he's just crushingly popular. No, we're nicely ahead. He is very, very popular on FanDuel, but both our FanDuel win rate and our top 150 exposure are nicely ahead. A little bit less than 10 percentage points ahead of the field's exposure with our win rate. And then obviously more than that with our exposure. So yeah, good looking spot on FanDuel. Less so on DraftKings, but very, very playable on DraftKings. Just looking like a bit of an undercut to where the field is at. Jalen didn't play last time. Comes back 13.2% winner, 10% of the top 150 for just 6,800 on DraftKings. Reasonably good spot. It's been a 1.07 per minute for the entire season. Where do I have him today? It's weird. I feel like for as good as he's been, and he does come up from time to time on shows, I just haven't gotten tons and tons of Jalen for whatever reason this year. I feel like it's just FanDuel-wise especially, just always kind of correctly priced. Let's go OKC. Start of Feb. .425 minutes, 902 possessions since the start of February. He's been just 1.16. So it's a bit of an uptick from the season-long marks. I've got him at 113 tonight. You could argue for a tiny little sliver more on top if you wanted to get a little bit more of him, but nothing I'm going to change in the projections update. I think we've got him dialed in pretty well. Just kind of is who he is spot. 13%, not a bad option by any means. 13%, but not a priority. 10% of our top 150. Giannis is Giannis. Always, always, always playable. I like this. 22% of Giannis on the DraftKings slate is not bad in our top 150 lineups against a 12.3% win rate. Got to get him on the court, obviously. That gives us a nice little edge on Giannis over the field. I like that. The public popularity is a couple few points below what we got for Giannis as a win rate on DraftKings, and we are nicely ahead of the field there. So Giannis looking like the pay-up luxury item of the day, at least so far on the DraftKings slate. Finally, we figure out where all this value is being spent. All that savings from all these really, really bad, cheap players that we can get to today. A little bit of spend on Giannis. I wonder how much we're going to get Giannis and Tatum together. Looks like a decent amount. Don't dislike that either. On FanDuel, you got to him 15% of the time in the top 150. That's probably a little bit ahead of the field, too. Let's see. Nope. Unfortunately, FanDuel, you're right in line with the field there. I have no issues if you wanted to call that 20%, grab a little edge on the field, even 25%. You're probably still okay. It's a 4-game slate, and it's Giannis, and there's plenty of value available to pay for him. A couple inspired minutes of Giannis ball can definitely put you over the top and just put lineups onto a completely different path. Like what I was talking about with Jokic when Jokic was only pulling like 3% and Doncic was looking better yesterday. Either one of those guys, and Giannis is on that list and a couple other guys are, can just bend the slate to their will if they go off for one of those crazy Jokic 95-point type nights. Everything else just ceases to matter and you're on a completely different path than what the slate looks like via the medians. So Giannis, anytime you want to grab a couple additional shares of Giannis and, just be mindful that you're changing the nature of which path you're walking on through the dark, deep forest of DFS. To make a clunky analogy that I've made many times. Trey says, Tara, I don't know if it's schmabs, but 3% Beal seems a little too low for 6,700. Been pretty good the last few. I know the big three are in. Thoughts kind of like Durant too. I don't know who on Boston is going to stop him. Yeah, as I was saying, I left KD out of the three big guys on the three big stars on Phoenix. I left KD the closest to his season-long number. I did give him tiny bit, or the model did really, where the last time they played, I'd given him a little bit more, like my usual, tenth of a point type of a thing. So I downgraded him a little bit more, and then he went off that day. He had a really good game, season high scoring. So that's leading me to, and as I've been saying with him all season, out of those three guys, the one who, as things eventually got figured out, the one who does stay closest to his true self is Kevin Durant. The one who has the highest upside on any given slate is Kevin Durant. He's the best player out of that group. He's the highest end by far. No offense to Devin Booker or Bradley Beal, but yeah, I would prefer KD out of that. And then, no, it did look like Beal was very low in our results here too. I think you missed that. I think that was before you got here, Trey. But yeah, Beal was in this territory. So yeah, 3% exposure is about right if that's what Schmabs has. We did have a 6.8% win rate on him. So technically you could basically, if the field is at 3-ish% popularity, you could double that and go to 6, even 10 if you really, really like the Beal spot today. But Sims are suggesting get right around that field number, right around 2-3%. It's probably appropriate. But again, I know you're typically building 1 to 3 lineups, Trey. So if you're doing that as a throw in, as a spot where it's not a poor price for Bradley Beal, it's just he hasn't really gotten there a ton for us this season. But that's why the price is where it is. We know there's a little bit more juice. So it's just like a total curveball type play, which I know you do like playing a lot of the time, Trey. It's not off the board for me. Let's put it that way. Would not be a priority in 150 lineups for me, but I would make sure that I had some. And then if I was building, 3 to 20 or 1 to 20, it's a guy I would at least consider, click him into the lineup if you're building it by hand, see how it looks, lock him into a lineup on your projection, your optimizer, and build out 50 lineups and then take those 50 and then drop them into a sim and see how they did. It's going to probably come up somewhere around like this, where he just won 6% of the time, but see if you can get to a good looking lineup. If he lands in, I'll tell you what, Trey, I'll go you one better. First Bradley Beal lineup is pretty far down the board. He's in the top 150 where we'll look at in a little bit. And if you remind me, I'll try to remember to show him to you. But you do have to scroll a ways down, further than I normally scroll down in when we're reviewing the lineups to get to a Beal lineup. The quality of that lineup is debatable. Bradley Beal, Dylan Brooks, Corey Kispert, Kyle Kuzma, Chet Holmgren, who we haven't talked about yet, Kyrie Irving, Josh Green, Ayo Dosunmu. That's actually not bad. I just said it was questionable, but I got to like it a little bit more as I went through it. I know for the record that you guys can't see this at all. That lineup was bringing you back $153 on your 15 on DraftKings today. A 0.1% win probability, 20% cash probability. One more time, Trey, that lineup was Bradley Beal, Dylan Brooks, Corey Kispert, Kyle Kuzma, Chet Holmgren, Kyrie Irving, Josh Green, and Ayo Dosunmu. But we do have better than that to work with in a lot of these other lineups. Giannis in the top lineup on the board. We'll get to that. I think we're mostly through the forwards, but let's make sure we didn't leave anybody hanging here. FanDuel-wise, Jay Crowder, another. Whatever you do, don't play Dylan Brooks and Jay Crowder in the same lineup. I'm going to stop everybody short of that disaster. Oh, God. This could get so ugly with some of these just total disaster point per minute guys. It's not necessarily something that wouldn't come up on FanDuel. On DraftKings, you don't really have to worry about it. Even at 3,300, Jay Crowder just landed in 3% of winners and 0 of the top 150. But on FanDuel, he landed in 18.7% of winners at 3,900 with both forward spots on that small 4-game slate. Probably one of the only effective enough guys from that price tier. So it's drawing him through a little bit. I would definitely have concerns about any lineup that includes more than 2 of Tim Hardaway, Josh Green, Dylan Brooks, Jay Crowder, fucking Pat Connaughton also on that list. Like, you do not want too many of those guys in the same lineup. They are too low end. 2 of them will succeed and the others will fail. If that. Your upside is 2 of them succeeding and the others failing. Matty Thybulle's also on that list, although he's not on the FanDuel slate. Yikes. Wow, what an ugly FanDuel night. Holy shit. Torrey Craig also, kind of floats close to that bucket as well. 3,800 shooting guard eligible. He's pulling 29.3% win, 28% of the top 150 on FanDuel. It's a 12% usage guy. It's a 0.74 per minute guy. Yeah, no Kobe White. Fine. Oof, boy. There's enough value on FanDuel that you can click a few of these guys together and put Giannis, Kuzma, Tatum, whoever high-end guards, Kyrie. You can get like multi-star type lineups, but you're taking a massive risk with the per minute output from these guys. The failure rates of some of these guys. That's kind of something that I wish we tracked somewhere. Like failure rate. How frequently do they completely disappoint and miss value? It's biasy. It's just a number I'd like to have handy so that I can further bias Dylan Brooks type guys. Ugh, God. I just fell out of love with this FanDuel slate in real time. Koulibaly's looking good there too. It's going to be some ugly lineups. Again, these guys, a couple of these guys will succeed. And this is math. That's why they look all right. This is rate over time at price and positioning. The numbers are what they are. What I'm saying is maybe you stop the math short of forcing you to play too many of those guys together, because the math will tell you that your failure rate for that would be pretty high. As illustrated by a 6-point night from Jay Crowder in 16 minutes the other night. Tobias Harris looks very good on FanDuel. Not at all on DraftKings. 7,400 on DK, both forward spots, 0.8% winner, 0.67% of the top 150. On that short FanDuel slate at just 7,200, both forward spots, he's in a quarter of all winning lineups. He's in almost a quarter of our top 150 lineups. Very good looking option tonight on the FanDuel slate.
0.97 per minute on the season, a 20.1% usage rate. Managed to put up just 12.1 in 26 and a half minutes the other night. Did they just get smoked by somebody, or did he come out for other reasons? I didn't actually catch that earlier. Oh, that was the 106 to 79 point shellacking against my Knicks that I didn't end up watching. Yeah, he only played 3 minutes and 37 seconds of the fourth quarter. And a short third quarter stint, it looks like, too. So no good reason other than they were just getting crushed. The Tobias lost minutes should expect him to come back to his usual 34 minutes. So on FanDuel, definitely somebody to keep in mind, somebody to prioritize. On DraftKings, not really at all. Other outlier, FanDuel 7.5% winner, Al Horford. He's a center only, so we'll mix him into the next page that we look at. But he's very different, FanDuel to DraftKings. 0.01% of all winning lineups. He did get into, I guess, one winner across 50,000 sims. But not a priority on DK. Very, very playable on FanDuel. Let's look at those centers. Alan Marga, Poku, the Poku Whisperer. I got 80% of yesterday wrong, but he got Poku. Yeah, hopefully it keeps on rolling like we were talking about yesterday. I'd like to see him get a chance. I'd like to have a cheap permanent asset. Would have been good to, it's always good to be there early. Now watch the price will shoot up. So DK, you get Danny Gafford to work with. $4,900 over there. He's a $6,700 center on FanDuel on that later slate. DraftKings, $4,900 looks great. 25.3% win rate, 28% of the top 150. Like I said, when I was talking about, maybe you make a rule around some of those Dallas guards, I would not include Daniel Gafford in that. If I have 3 of those guards plus Danny Gafford, I'm all right with it. I'd prefer to have 2 of those guards plus Danny Gafford. And then just like I said, box out the guards maybe to 2, and then let your full Dallas exposure be 3, even 4. But I wouldn't include him in how I'm boxing those guys out. Just because there's just totally different means of piling up their fantasy points. Kuzma on FanDuel, 30.3% winner, 26% of the top 150 at forward spots only. You do get him center eligible on DraftKings, landed in a quarter of the top 150, nearly a 20% win rate on DK. Looks like a very good option. Again, we've got him right between what since the start of February, the season long, and this situation production has been, and looks like at worst a very playable spot. Jabari Smith at 6,600, we talked about a little bit, but 18.6% winner. Again, 9% of the top 150. There was room to maybe bring him out to that 18% range against the field. On FanDuel at 44%, seems fairly unavoidable. 7,100 power forward only. 37.7% winner, 44% of the top 150. Chet, like I mentioned, Chet Holmgren was in that lineup that I threw to Trey that had Bradley Beal in it. 16.2% winner, 24% exposure in the top 150. Nice little bounce above the win rate. Let's see where that puts us relative to the field. Nicely ahead of the field on Chet. Always interested in that spot. 1.23 DraftKings points per minute for 7,200. That's pretty good. That's pretty cheap. Throwing him in there against Gafford, against PJ Washington, guys like that. No real issues with expecting a decent upside game from Chet here. For the money, I like that a lot. 5.4 points per dollar. Gives you 16.29% win rate. And again, 24% of the top 150 puts you ahead of our win rate, but also well ahead of the field on him. It's about 10 percentage points ahead of the field on Chet for a very good price. I prefer him greatly to $7,700 DeAndre Ayton going up against my Knicks. I do think Ayton looks like the best per minute option from the Portland side of things. I do think he's got a chance to have a pretty good game. He's been crushing it lately. He put up 60 in 40 minutes the other night. That's going to be a grindy, really low total game. He's only giving you 1.07 for the full season versus Chet's 1.23 for 500 less. Ayton's number's been a lot higher than that. in recent weeks. He's not popular. He's owned in the single digits, the upper mid single digits. We are getting about double the field on Ayton as well. But between the two, I like Chet a little bit better for a little bit cheaper. Paul Reed at 5,400. Playable, but not a priority. Just cheap for the position. Prefer Gafford. On FanDuel, we're just getting Reed in low single digits. Center only at 6,500. There's really, that value gets stretched really, really thin when you start to put him at that level. But over the course of the season, a little bit above a point per minute. Was right around that range in their last game. Just plays like mid-20s minutes most of the time. Giannis, again, one of the highest priority. He's got to be the highest priority star, right? Let me put that back. Yeah, apparently Patrick Baldwin is not available in the DraftKings slate. It's probably a name convention. I think he's Patrick Baldwin the 4th or something. So yeah, Giannis at 22%, and then Tatum also at 22% exposure from the top of the board. And then you're still getting 56% Kyrie at 84, plus 46% Freddie VanVleet at 83. I question how many lineups will get all three of those guys together, but that is massive exposure to those four very, very good players, and especially when we're talking Tatum and Giannis in the 20s up at the top. But Giannis at 11.4, clearly the priority star on DraftKings today. SGA, the only guy approaching him, and still 1,000 less in price, and he crushes SGA's exposure in our top 150. The win rates are about the same, so it's something to keep in mind. The field will be with SGA a little bit more, which is what's pushing us somewhat more toward Giannis. Interesting board on DK. Nurk, getting back to guys that are on both. 13% winner, 8% of the top 150 for 7,300 at center only on FanDuel. It's been a 1.25 per minute guy over the course of the full season, 19% usage. That was a disaster. 18 points in 29 and a half minutes the other night, but typical expectation for Nurk is 27 to 35 FanDuel points with upside for a little bit more. So I don't dislike the spot. On DraftKings at just 2% win, 2% of the top 150. Looks like he's probably getting boxed out by the availability of guys like Gafford, guys like Ayton, and guys like Chet that just aren't on the FanDuel slate. I was like, wait, where'd Gafford go? I forgot. I resorted by price. So Nurk doesn't really look like a priority on DraftKings, but you can definitely get him on FanDuel. Now that we're resorted by win rate here, let's get back to, we did Paul Reed. PJ looks minorly playable on DraftKings at 51. It's just, if you're going there, like Gafford's a little bit less. Stronger numbers. You could get a little upside out of PJ. It's just been a much lower per minute performer. Bobby Portis, especially if you end up getting no Giannis, could see a bit of an uptick. Right now, he looks great on FanDuel anyway. 6,400 on the short slate, 20.8% win rate, 22.6% of our top 150. That's just at 24 minutes. You'd see a couple additional minutes, a little bit of an uptick by rate. On DraftKings, 6% winner, 4% of the top 150. Kind of an afterthought, but a playable one. Brolo's looking very good on FanDuel. Vooch is looking very good on FanDuel, where our options are limited. They're both center only. 5,500 for Brolo. Very good price. It's a 0.96 per minute player. Did another guy with a disaster in his last game. Man, ugly the other day. 25.9 minutes, 12.8 FanDuel points. That's a bad Brolo game. We all know he's better than that. I think it's just an effective price. 5,500. He's perfectly fine for that money. 4.7 points per dollar. At 8,200, you're getting 4.9 points per dollar out of Vooch, 4.89 on DraftKings. Neither guy is a priority on DK, single digits. But both guys, kind of priorities on FanDuel. Looks like some news might have just broken. Let me see. Eric Gordon now out. Jaylen Brown will play. Everything else is Friday news. All right, so we don't get the Derek White bonus with Jalen playing, which is fine. Still looks like a playable part at worst. Eric Gordon out. I think I already had Eric Gordon out. Oh, no, I do have him in. 21 minutes freeing up in Phoenix. Probably just goes downstream. Let's see here. Yeah. Boom. Roddy. Ugh. Just looking at who played the last game. And maybe it goes up the ladder a little. Last game, no Gordon. We got 38 out of Book. I've got him at 37. We got 39 out of KD. I've got him at 37. We got 36 out of Grayson Allen. I got him at 34. We got 36 out of Beal. I got him at 34. So a handful of those numbers will go toward those guys. Makes each of them look 2 minutes better. Not going to be a rate change really there. But yeah, figure maybe 2 additional minutes for each of Beal and Allen. And then I'd probably keep it at 1 additional minute for each of these guys. Maybe see these guys go to 38, 38, 36, 36. And then Royce played 29, so he gets a little bit, which is typical. And then it looks like David Roddy got 5 minutes, so he'll probably just drop into the board at a very low projection. Yeah, that does free up 21 minutes to be distributed around, so you'll see a little bit of an uptick. These guys will look a little bit even better than they already do, which gets us a little bit more of a fingernail on the ledge with Kevin Durant on FanDuel, a little bit more on DraftKings. Definitely would give us a little bit more life on the Bradley Beal play that we talked about before. He was already at 6.8, just 2.6% exposure, but maybe he gets out to probably not a 10. But if we're giving him 2 additional minutes and he's around a point per minute guy, you got to figure, 35-ish DraftKings points. Might get him to 9+, closing in on 10% win rate. Makes the play a little better. Book, probably not as much. Again, it's another guy, if we give him an additional minute, moves him from 41 and change, maybe call it, just under 43. But that probably doesn't move the needle too far north on the win rate. Probably doesn't move the exposure number too far up. Same thing on FanDuel. Beal is less impacted because he's just 8,000 on FanDuel still. So that price is just incorrect even if we account for the uptick. He becomes a little bit more playable, but it probably just lands in like this kind of territory. So it just maintains focus for KD on the FanDuel slate. Grayson Allen would gain a little tiny bit, but would remain pretty irrelevant. Royce O'Neal, maybe a little bit more life than this, because it will be a few minutes. It's like 3-ish minutes, 4-ish minutes. At 0.83, you're talking about, he probably gets him into the 20s. Not a priority, but on a very, very short FanDuel slate, there would be a little bit more life for Royce O'Neal there. DraftKings, not so much, because you got more to work with. Even Nurk might be enhanced just on the idea. I got to check what the rates look like. Maybe there's a little tiny sliver of additional life for Nurk, but it won't change this outlook all that much. And then on DraftKings, it won't really matter. And then no real changes downstream for, I don't think, these guys. Drew Eubanks did end up playing 18 in that one, but that's related to something else, I think. So reasonable uptick for in the minor percentage point gain kind of ground for those guys, but worth talking through. Yeah, Trey called that out just before I spotted it, I think. Appreciate that, Trey. Let's get this back to reasonable size, and let's finish up the centers, and we'll take a quick look at some lineups. Hour 39 coming up on 6:15 already. 7:30 start tonight, so we're okay time-wise. Handful of folks still hanging out. Who do we miss? Do we miss anybody important? Let's see. Mo Bamba in 18 minutes pulling a little bit of life on FanDuel because there's nobody to play on that slate. 11.9% winner, 9% of the top 150. He is not on the board at all on DraftKings. The same could be said about Daniel Theis. 4% winner, 3% of the top 150 on FanDuel, 0.14 and 0 on DraftKings. 7% for Al Horford, we touched on before. Do I like Al with no KP a little bit better than Mo Bamba? Daniel Theis, I do. Even though the win rate is a little bit lower than where Bamba is, he's fortunately well above Daniel Theis there. His win rate's a little bit lower than Mo Bamba, but that's kind of artificial. Bamba's at 4,000. We're just looking at like 18, maybe 20 minutes. He's an okay per minute guy, but the ceiling is non-existent, where Al Horford in 30 minutes can give you a ceiling game. We've seen it plenty of times from Al, even in this version of Al Horford. So I do like the Al Horford spot a little bit better, or a lot better, really, than the Mo Bamba spot if I'm trying to decide between those two guys for one lineup. That said, you've got better options in Brolo, in Vooch, in Nurk, Bobby Portis even. Giannis doesn't play center on FanDuel. None of these guys are centers either. Less relevant guys on DraftKings. Again, Vooch, a little bit playable. Brolo, a little bit playable. But really, most of your weight coming out of these top-end guys. That's about the slate, gang. Jericho Sims, unfortunately, no real life left for poor Jericho. With OG coming back, that becomes more of a direct split for those minutes between Precious and Hartenstein, and Jericho kind of gets relegated to the bench. It's only been at 0.65 per minute, but just a kid who just has capable bursts of like 8 minutes of basketball that are really, really good, but just doesn't see enough time. But anyway, just spotted him there, so I figured I'd mention him since his role changed. Jeff Green, no real faith. Low math numbers anyway, and no real faith in any kind of upside. 16 minutes, 3,700. If he found himself starting, then maybe you get a little bit more, but he's just another. It would just be piling on yet another totally low-end player. 0.67 per minute, low usage in all situations. Let's take a look at some lineups. Sims lineups, everything you see here, courtesy of our pals over at acemine.io. Somebody asked me on Twitter yesterday who I recommend for Sim sites. The answer is AceMine. That's why we watch them on our shows. That's why their sim results feed the data that we talk about on these shows. Great pricing over there as compared to some of the places we were talking about early in the show that have obnoxiously high and broken and unaffordable pricing for the average gamer. This is much more built with people like you in mind, people like me in mind, where I don't want to spend through the nose to get the tools to maybe equal success. I'm willing to pay, but not the exorbitant numbers that other places are asking for. These guys are realistic about that. They're realistic about who their market is. They're really smart guys. They've got products for MMA, NBA, PGA, coming soon, MLB, which I'm going to insist is dropped up here. If you guys are watching, top of the list for MLB. Not down here, not relegated to below MMA. Let's look at some results. So, just starting from the top, we've got a Giannis lineup all the way at the top of the board. Another one right here, another one right there. Plenty of room for Giannis. We were seeing him 22% of the time in winners. What I want to look for is where are we getting Giannis and Tatum, or are we getting Giannis and Tatum? I know we'll be getting the lineups with Giannis, Freddie VanVleet, Kyrie Irving. Not sure if we got that one's got Chet in it as well. But I'm curious where the cutoffs are, like Freddie, Kyrie, Tatum, and reasonably good options there. So it looks like a 3-star cutoff where you're probably not getting in your best overall lineups Giannis and Tatum together. I'm sure we can find them together in one of these. Maybe. I promise I won't take too much time with this exercise of looking for those two together. I'm just so curious. Maybe not. Yeah. So while we've got a lot of each of them, it does seem like that's a little bit of a break point, putting them both in the lineup. Giannis and Jason Tatum, who are our two highest exposed overall stars. The other combo, of course, that we're not seeing is Giannis and SGA, because we didn't get a lot of SGA exposure in our top overall lineups. So it does look like you're kind of making that decision. And then, just so he's highlighted here, Tatum's in just as many of these. They were both at 22%. It's just mostly different lineups. So you're kind of making a decision between those two. And then you can build with common parts around them. Obviously, you get a little bit higher end, a little bit more geared into the balanced type territory with Tatum lineups, because you're saving so much between him and Giannis. But a lot of the parts around them are going to be the same. You can get to a lot of Freddie, who has excellent upside today. I like Io. I think that's a fairly sharp play. I'm thrilled to report that I'm not seeing a lot of Dylan Brooks in the very top lineups. There's one. Oh, no, there's another. Damn. But still, not overwhelming Dylan Brooks on DK right now in the very, very top. Here's another one hiding over here. A lot of Timmy. Also not overly comfortable. Io and Caruso, I don't know how frequently. I don't think you're making a mistake necessarily playing those guys together. But not my favorite overall combo from what's available on DraftKings today. So it looks like we can spend plenty of money at point guard. And primarily we are Freddie, Jalen Green. Well, Jalen Green's not expensive, but Io. Or no, excuse me, Jalen's expensive. Tyus Jones, Derek White. Mostly Freddie at the point. Freddie or Io. A little bit of Dame down here. Kyrie. A lot of Kyrie at shooting guard. That's where we're getting him primarily positionally. It seems like it pays to put Kyrie at shooting guard so that you can take that high-end point guard. Obviously, you've got the guard spot to do that with as well, and it looks like a fair amount of them is landing over here too. Amens and Timmys and Kisperts, either through the small forward or the forward spot a little bit. Timmy obviously works in guard as well. As we saw through the show, tons and tons of these Dallas guys and Houston guys. Center looks fairly spendy between your Chet shares, which I like a lot. The Nurk shares, which were looking pretty good. Kuzma, who was looking pretty good. Gafford, who was a value play and looks very good. But yeah, you get mostly spendy at center. And then, again, it's depending on what you did over here, but largely can save at the collective guard and forward spots. And then you can bounce back with a kind of a mixed bag at util, actually. Some Exums, and mostly it looks like util got a little savings oriented with some of these, but we do have like a Jalen Brunson here. We've got a Dame there, a DeRozan, a Chet. Yeah, I think maybe it's using the util spot for a little bit of flexible savings. Freddie VanVleet looking like a key. Giannis and Tatum both looking like keys, but again, deciding between them might be itself key. I wish we could do that, actually. Feature alert, or feature request, Ace Mind guys, if you're out there, if you're watching. If we had an ability to just like 2 input boxes up here, show me the lineups in this that include both these players. Show me lineups that include Giannis and Tatum. Just if I could just like type their names in. It'd just be helpful. Just for analysis, for the sake of analysis. Let's jump over to FanDuel. If you guys aren't following the @rotoscouts Twitter handle, you're really not missing out on anything, but it would help me out a lot. Or minorly. It would just be nice of you if you would happen to click on Twitter, follow that @rotoscouts Twitter handle, give it a couple more followers if you happen to be on Twitter one day. I'm not asking you to go out of your way, but if you're on there and you see something pop up, give it a little heart, give it a little retweet so it gets in front of more eyeballs, feeds the algorithm monster. Either that or get behind the effort to shut down all social media sites in general. TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, get rid of them all. Worst thing for humanity that's happened in this century. Anyway, not to get off on a rant. FanDuel only working with 4 games. Jalen Green, Freddie VanVleet in that top lineup. Torrey Craig, Caruso, Kispert, DeRozan, Giannis, Jay Crowder, Brook Lopez. So that one gives us a Torrey Craig, Jay Crowder combo. The rest of those guys are all right. That next one down gives us Dylan Brooks and mostly reasonable performers. So we're not really, it doesn't look like this one. This next one down here is a lot of Dylan Brooks. Scary. Brooks, Koulibaly, maybe gets a little thin. Paul Reed. Starsy Scrubsier probably, FanDuel-wise, just with less to choose from. Plenty of spend, obviously. At the point, it looks like we're primarily spendy, or at least like mid-range. Savings-oriented at shooting guard for the most part. Although a lot of this is Io, who's in like that fair mid-range. A lot of Dylan Brooks. Oof. Your small forward spots are the fairly straightforward Kispert or Kuzma or DeRozan, and then one of the value guys. This one's got Tatum at least in it. But a lot of DeRozan, a lot of Kispert, and some Kuzma mixed in through there. Room for Giannis at your power forward, which is good. Room for KD. Doesn't look like we've got double spend on those two players, at least in the very, very top. But we do get like Giannis, DeRozan, Freddie VanVleet is pretty good. This KD one has nothing else great in it. KD, Freddie VanVleet, Jalen Green's all right. I don't love that KD lineup. Let's see if we can do better for Kevin Durant. Oh, he also only landed in that one. What was his FanDuel number? That is not a lot of Kevin Durant. Yeah, only 7%. And I might downgrade my enthusiasm a little bit about Kevin Durant, given this is our best Kevin Durant lineup, and it's the third best. And if we reran the sim, you might get him here, and here for his 7%, right? But it is only 7% exposure across these top 150. And you got to take a bit of a dip down here to find more of them. That said, just in a raw sense, I kind of like this lineup a little bit better than that one that did better. KD, Tatum, Vooch on the back end. Kispert, Beasley and Dylan Brooks and Torrey Craig in the lineup together I don't love. And then it improves again on the front end with Caruso and Tyus Jones. So this part's a little thin. But pieces and parts of that lineup, if maybe you could patch somebody else in there for either Beasley, Torrey Craig, or Dylan Brooks, and probably leave Dylan Brooks there. It would probably be Beasley that I'd be looking to forklift out of that one. You do have plenty of money to spend, that's for sure. FanDuel-wise, that top lineup bringing you back. Ooh, monster. I think I ran this against the 15. That's a biggie, though. These are the kind of numbers you only see on a 4-game slate or less. A 1% probability of winning. I question that. But that would be Jalen Green, Freddie VanVleet, Torrey Craig, Alex Caruso, Corey Kispert, DeMar DeRozan, Giannis, Jay Crowder, and Brolo. That lineup is a monster, at least according to our sim results. You can see the cash probabilities, too, with the 4-game slate are monstrous. Cash more than half the time with Alex Caruso, Tyus Jones, Ayo Dosunmu, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Corey Kispert, Jabari Smith, Kyle Kuzma, and Nikola Vukovic. Boy, that's an ugly balanced lineup. Spends your full 60. Manages to somehow make it so that Kyle Kuzma is the biggest star in that lineup. That's one approach. I'm surprised that lineup did that well. I'm also surprised that lineup manages to spend all your salary. Let me jump back to DraftKings real quick. If Trey, you still here? Paul C says, yeah, if your boy Biden shuts down Twitter, we are all in big trouble, as Twitter is the only one not censored. Right. That's why Elon canceled the the show when he didn't like his interview on Don Lemon yesterday, because Twitter is not censored. Oh man, I went from like this time last year saying like, oh, Elon Musk can do whatever he wants. He's going to colonize Mars, and that's the most important thing that we could be doing as a species. To, my God, what a monster that guy is. Anyway, not to get off on a political rant. So we jump back to DraftKings, right? Yeah, I wanted to show Trey where those Beal lineups were at, but they got a little bit better. But again, Trey, if you're still out there, as we go down the board here, you have to go down that far to get to those Beal lineups, but they'll probably bounce a little. And then you were looking at these kinds of results. $150 coming back on your 15.1% win probability. You can see obviously the differences, right? You're dealing with 0.31, 20s, up to like 35% cash probability on the bigger 6-game slate. Trey, you're banned on Twitter. What'd you do? Banned fully or just blocked by people? Yeah, and by the way, it's not even political for me. I just think social media is just bad for people, bad for society, bad for the individual. It's just not good. Regardless of which side of the aisle you come down on. It's like the only thing in Washington they've agreed on, too. That bill passed the House massively favored on both sides. So it's like the only thing both sides have agreed on in the last 8 years. Except for the guy at the top who flipped his view from let's ban TikTok to let's not ban TikTok because somebody gave him a pile of money to pay all his legal fees. But hey, let's not get political. All right, before I lose all my viewers, let me get off this show. You guys out there rock. I appreciate all the likes, the subscriptions, and so on and so forth. I forgot to mention, I'll put it in Discord. I'm not going to be here for a show tomorrow, and there are going to be limited projection updates. I'll get the initial setup. I'll get all the if-thens type stuff up there for you. But I'm going to be out for the night tomorrow. So taking the family, or I'm not taking, my parents are taking the family as a big Christmas present to my niece to see The Lion King on Broadway tomorrow night. So I'll be doing that. Won't be here for a show, but I will get like 3:30, 4 o'clock will probably be about the last projections update. So I'll give you a baseline, and then I'll call out what the news and to watch is, and then you're going to be a little bit on your own tomorrow. But I will see you back here Monday, I guess. Maybe we'll pop on over the weekend if anything interesting happens. But at worst, we'll be back on Monday. You guys rock. I'll see you then. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. I'll see you.